Okay, I think we're rolling. Hey Sam, let's have a super quick um, crash course of Redux. So generally, this is a familiar thing in React. So you have your application state um, at components. We usually have components and the state over there, and the view, the render part uses those state and shows whatever the value is there in the state. And we have buttons and where user can click and certain action is triggered, and that action will update the state. Again, the state goes to view, user can update those things based on the actions. Common pattern, right? um, in Redux. So where does Redux come into picture? So sometimes this state is distributed across multiple different components, different pages, but since they are linked together because of the application logic or some reason, we want to have certain state at top or at global level, and make it so that all the components can consume the same data. React's way is by using context, but it has some limitations. That's where Redux comes into picture. Redux is like very super old library, and I think in our project right now we have three plugins or libraries to use Redux. The first one is Redux itself. You can use it on any kind of project, not necessarily React. And to use it on a React project, I am using another plugin called React Redux. It simplifies a lot of things and makes Redux even more usable for React project. But once we know the Redux, it's really fine. To we can find our way. And Redux is so huge in the sense that it has so many plugins, so many different things that you can do with its plugin ecosystem. You can have many different things. You can attach many different things to Redux, and you can make your application even more powerful. And that's why I added it right away, because down the lane we might or we will eventually need it. So why not? So why wait when you so just why wait to add this, right? So some of the core principles of Redux is it's the single source of truth. So if we are having a global um, data store, we'll keep it. We need to have that as a single source of truth. As I am migrating uh, the stuff from context to to the Redux side, I'll show you how I'm doing the migration shortly. The data on the Redux global state is read only. So all this data. Also, the Redux has this plugin on the Chrome Web Store. You can just search Redux DevTools, and you can install it, and you can activate, and you can see this state. So all this data is read only, like normal React's variable. You cannot edit it directly. You need to have some sort of a setter function in React to add, sorry, to adjust the value. Just like in context, you have say active tab. This is the state. You cannot edit it directly. You can only edit or change the value using this function, right? So the similar thing is there in Redux. And so how do you make changes? So you make changes with the help of two things: reducers and actions. And it took me a little while to understand what reducers are and what actions are. So I'll try to make it really simple for you. And by the way, I wrote a bit of documentation over here in the store folder. This is our global store. Everything related to Redux is over here. And you won't have to touch this index file. This is set in stone pretty much. This is we'll look into the reducers folder. I am moving, as you can tell. Let me split the screen. I am moving the UI context bit to UI reducer part over here. So right now I have only moved this variable into Redux as I felt needed. So I think I will take some variables from here and move it to the Redux side and access it. I'll show you, but the concept is a bit important. Wow, we are already at 4-minute mark, but that should not be a problem. So you have um, reducer functions that will change your state, and the way you call these reducer functions are is through actions. So um, it's better to show you the code now. Okay, we have this nice little animation over here in the this website. I'll send you the link for these and how they help. So this is the UI bit where users will dispatch the action. So say in the state, let's wait for it to begin. So user clicks the event, some sort of button, and we dispatch an action. That action goes to Redux, and the reducer function takes that action, the value inside the action, and updates the global state. I hope that makes sense. Let's do it one more time. So we have the value in the state, right? So $10, whatever it is. So user clicks deposit. So user wants to deposit $10. That is the action that is being dispatched, and it takes, okay, what's the previous value? 0. So you do have to take look into the details. um, 0, where is this 0 coming from? I think it's confusing me if I look into the detail, but this is a general flow. So this state over here is the global state, and just because you have Redux, it doesn't mean you cannot have context or you cannot have your local states. You can have them, but you should not use the same value in all those places and try to update simultaneously, maybe because that is when the conflicts will arise. So as long as I am moving the data from context, commenting it out and moving to the Redux, it's fine. But if I have the same variable at two different places and try to use both, it will cause problem. So let's say I want to move this variable, which is a simple variable, a Boolean variable called onboarding. Excuse me, I just had this sudden cold for some reason from today. So let's try to move this. I'll so comment this out. So we have onboarding. This is, since this is a UI context, I can add this over here into our UI reducer. So onboarding default value is false. So we have an initial state object where I'm adding the variables. So now I need, this is a variable, now I need to add a setter or a reducer function that will take the previous value of the state and the action. So for the time being, let's just say set onboarding. So set onboarding is a setter or a reducer function. You can just copy the above pattern. So when I say this state, it refers to this initial state or the previous state of application. And action is triggered whenever user presses a button or whenever we dispatch a action. That action with all the data comes over here. It's a parameter basically. So what will we return is a new state of the application. So we'll take all the previous values. So say all the previous values means active tab or whatever the data. We don't want these other data to be affected. So we'll just keep that as it is and just change this part onboarding, and we'll say action dot payload, whatever the payload is coming. If the user sends the value true, we'll keep it true. If the user or the event or the dispatch that we call sends false, it will be false. We can be even more verbose with this. So say we can have a reducer function. Ideally, Redux says to write as verbose as possible. So say we can have set onboarding true. as a function, and we know whenever we call it, the state, we won't even need any action because we know what this function should do. This function should return all the previous state variables as it is, but set the onboarding to true. Simple, right? In the similar way, you can have another function called set onboarding false. This is verbose and this is pure function, so no matter how many times you call it, it's always going to be true, it's always going to be false. Redux suggests us to use these kind of functions, but we can also do the same thing by writing this function. So I just comment this out for the time being because we'll have to import all these functions, and that's why I try to make things a little bit more minimal, but always keep in mind what Redux suggests. So whenever you say if I encounter a bug related to this variable in the future, I will then just make it even more verbose. If it's not causing any bugs, then it's okay to use a simple one function to get two things done, right? So set onboarding. So I need to export this reducer function over here, and since in our application, in a simple application, you will only have one reducer, but in our application we are splitting types of reducers into multiple different types. Just like context, you have UI context and you have user context, and there was event context. I have moved everything from event context to this event reducer. So as you can see, there are multiple states, sorry, multiple values inside the state object. We have multiple different reducers that take state and action and just update the update the respective values, and we need to export all these methods. So just now we added this new variable and a new reducer function, or a setter to update it. So we need to go to the index. This is the root of all the reducers. So in UI we added a new function, so let's import this, set onboarding, and export it. So let's, for the sake of events, this is UI, UI reducers, events reducers. Reducers are basically pure functions that return predictable data every time they are called. So we have moved it. Now how do we access this data, right? So I will try to search this function wherever this is being called globally inside our application. So it's being called at a few different places. So let's go over here, onboarding.js. So this is context way of calling this, right? But now what will we do is we will use two hooks provided by React Redux library. This is the library that provides us React hooks that we would not have otherwise if we were simply using Redux. So the two hooks that we need is use selector that allows us to access the variables from Redux library from the global state. Use selector and use dispatch. Dispatch is the hook that allows us to call this function. Basically, we cannot call it directly. We can only call those reducer functions by dispatching the actions. I think actions are about to be are on their way out of usage. Like we say we need to call action, but we don't really write any action because it's a little redundant in my opinion. But we used to write a lot of actions in 2016 or 17. But these days we directly call the reducer functions. So from React Redux we have these two libraries, sorry, these two hooks, and we need to make a constant called dispatch that you get from use dispatch, right? So where we are calling, so let's first access the value. So the way you access value is const onboarding equals to use selector. So you say use selector, give me the state, global state, and from global state I need state dot persisted reducer dot this is in UI. So this is in UI. By the way, you can just extract the entire state from here, or from PR stands for persisted reducer. So you can get the entire um, Redux state or global state from this variable. If we did not use persist reducer, then you could directly get the entire state from over here, and then navigate your way down to whatever you need. So but now we just need one particular variable from the big state tree. So state dot persisted reducer dot UI dot onboarding. You might be familiar with these question marks. This is just a way of saying uh, if there isn't a variable called onboarding, give me undefined, just don't crash. If there isn't a variable called onboarding in that state and you are trying to access it, this thing will crash if this value is not there. But if you use this, it's going to silently return you undefined and won't crash, which is what ideally it's better to have. It's better to have bugs than crash, right? So this is how you access the variable. And now let's find where this set onboarding is called. So this is called at two places. So the way you call is you just wrap around with the dispatch function, and you just wrap around again. So every time you call it, I know it's not very ideal. And also we need to locate this function. This is reducer. This should come from our reducers over here. We have exported it from there. So import set onboarding from, where are we? Store. Sorry, no. Store slash reducers. Hopefully this made sense. So now technically, on whenever this function is, or this component is loaded, onboarding is loaded, this we need, well, we can have the value over there and we can check whether it's set or not. So UI context set onboarding is not defined. Okay, on UI context I need to comment this out so that we don't have confusion. Okay, I think this comes in when we log in. So let me sign out. What was the password? If I can't remember. Sesame testing 1.1. Okay, this is the password. Hopefully things will work. The onboarding variable should be updated here. I think whenever you first access it, that is when it gets added into the persisted reducer tree. Let me see. UI context onboarding. Oops, we are not calling the onboarding. Are we? Let's just go to slash onboarding. Log out. I haven't signed out in ages, so slash login slash onboarding. So this we are here at onboarding. Okay, let's add my image. Okay, the events and co, whatever, events ltd. Let's go with ltd. Enter a postcode. Stripe account connected goes over here. Onboarding. Why isn't it showing up? So we landed over here, or at least we should see the default values that is coming in. Let me in. So where when is this called? Button, let me in. Okay, what was there's some bug in this part? Definitely. So let's try another value. Version, where are we setting the version? Doc.data.web version. So this is where we are setting the web version, right? Okay, let's do this. Hopefully this gets sorted. I'll just run through this. UI context. Comment these two out. Then go over here, add version, and say by default it's 0.0.0. So this is going to be a string, most likely. I'll fetch the data from set from the web. So set version state.action, and the only thing that you need to update over here is version. This is where we want the data from action to come and stay. Now we need to export this function, this reducer function, and we also need to update it over here at the index. We need to fetch it and again export it, so that we, while importing, we don't have to remember which part, which reducer it's from. You could also import it from the individual reducer itself. Okay, and let's search where it's being used like we did earlier. So set version is being used in the login, so I will comment this out. I'll import the use selector from React Redux. So let dispatch equals use dispatch, and get version from use selector hook. The selector state dot persistent reducer dot UI dot version. Now for this one, we just wrap it with dispatch. So this is how I've been doing the refactor. Let's find where it's used. So this is the only place where it's being called. This file it's being called in page template as well. So we'll have to comment this out from here. Oh, we also need to import the use that particular reducer. So import set version from store/reducers. So if we go to page template, import that again, and also import these two hooks, and then say const dispatch equals use dispatch, and find where it's being used. Set version, it's called here. So ideally, if we just set it once, we don't have to set it from two different places. So I'll see where it's ideal to keep it, because it's going to persist after that. It's not going to get deleted. So maybe calling it once is more than enough. But we can again call the function again, but we can remove this part or minimize this thing of like being set from different parts. And version, now we cannot access it from the context, we can only access it from, is it being used? I'm curious about that. Yeah, we are collecting it, but we are not using it over here, so no point of using selector. But I think once we log in, we might not need to. I'll try to log out and see, because once we log in, I don't think we'll need to do this. Yeah, I think that because of user email, there was a lot of confusion. That's going to get resolved. Okay, so that's the only place where we were calling it in access. But let me try to log out. I think I'm already logged out. Okay, I have this error. I will look into it. We have set onboarding is not a function. We have an error from page template, but let's go and see over here if it worked. Woohoo! Okay, we have the version over here after within 30 minutes, so that's good. Yeah, this has gone excessively long, I guess, but yeah, that's how we do it. Let me quickly try to fix this as well. Error that we had. Set onboarding is not a function in page template. Did I forget to set onboarding? Okay, I haven't replaced all the set onboarding that is being called, because now you cannot use this from from the context because it needs to come from dispatch. So set version, set onboarding, it needs to come from reducers. Dispatch is here. Do we have these two hooks? Use dispatch and use selector, because now if we want to use this, access this value, const onboarding, hope I don't make a typo, use selector and then say state persisted reducer dot UI dot onboarding. Once we have the TypeScript, it should also do the auto suggestion thing. Dispatch. Okay, so I think even this should be good to go. Let me try to log out and log in. Has already been declared. Really? Okay, there are two imports. Yeah, onboarding is false. So this is what I was trying to get updated into or added into the Redux. But yeah, Redux, this is all there is to how to use the Redux. You have use selector hook to access the data, and then use dispatch hook to dispatch the actions or call those reducer functions that we wrote, and that's how you access the data. And as I said, there are three libraries that is in play over here. First one is the Redux. Second one is let me copy this. The second one is React Redux. Let me copy this. You can just skim this briefly. And the third one is Redux Persist. Redux Persist. There are a couple more that I will add down the lane. Redux Saga and Redux Thunk. They help you with network related things, for a lot of automatic data updates behind the scene kind of thing. So yeah, I'll add them later down the road. But Redux Persist, and it's also widely used in React Native as well to keep the data persisted in React Native project as well. But yeah, once everything is done, you don't have a lot of things. You don't need to do a lot of there isn't much of overhead, I think. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully your 33 minutes did not get wasted. So yeah, how do I stop this?